we met each other?
Casey, help me. Please tell me you know what's going on.
So after over 2 years, Loki is back with season 2. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. If you haven't guessed, I'm talking about the first episode of the second season, so if you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers. And I thought this was a pretty solid opener considering, again, the show has been off air for several years and it was only 6 episodes long. The finale did completely change the MCU at the time, and I'll be honest, I don't think Marvel has topped the Loki finale in film or TV since. There has been a lot of debate recently about the quality of Marvel and the direction that it's going in, and the kind of fatigue and lack of interest. So I did wonder how much of a draw Loki Season 2 would be for people after all these years away. And it seems to be getting generally pretty positive reviews online, but not a huge amount of hype. But I really enjoyed the first episode. I thought it was a great reintroduction. We get introduced to a few new characters and I think it completely set up the season, but that's probably for a theory video. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. But let's get to it. It opens with a Kang statue that we've seen at the end of season 1's finale, and there's a few of them scattered around the TVA. Loki's running from Mobius as he doesn't know him other than he's a variant, and the TVA is notably different. I mean, it's a lot busier and it seems that there's a lot more going on at this point. Loki leaps over a ledge to escape Hunter B-19 and lands on a flying van crashing into an office with Casey in it. And remember, this is literally minutes after Loki met He Who Remains, so it's a lot to take in for him.
I'm fine.
This is where he starts time slipping as he realises that Casey doesn't remember him. And we've seen this featured heavily in the trailers, so from what we can tell, he jumps to the same place but a different time. When he crashed into the office, he cracked the floor, and although the office has changed, the crack hasn't, and that helps him highlight the changes in time and the different times that we're going to see in this episode. Because we're going to get different characters working together in different time zones, and I do think this is going to be a huge part of the series as well. But before he can fill in Casey in the present, he jumps again, and it cuts to the ending of season 1 with Mobius and Hunter watching the timelines branch out after He Who Remains died. Hunter B-15 wants to tell everyone the timekeepers aren't true.
We tell the people of the TVA the truth about this place.
But while she's explaining this, Casey shows up to tell Mobius about Loki, and then he just... Agent X5, who's going to feature later on heavily in the series, asks Mobius if his favourite jet ski is on the sacred timeline, and he just goes off on a little rant about jet skis, so they better pay this off this season.
You know, the funny thing about jet skis, everyone thinks that it's a personal watercraft, and it's actually a brand.
With Renslayer gone, there's a judge and a general of the TVA that have taken over, so Mobius is on his way to see them and explain what's happening, and Loki jumps back in just as he leaves. Loki keeps reappearing while Mobius is on his way there, and they discuss how they're going to break this to all the judges and explain the timekeepers and the whole Kang thing. Loki appears in the same room as them but at a different time with Kang's face instead of the timekeepers on the wall. So is this He Who Remains, or is this the Council of Kangs, or is it a different group of Kangs working together? I don't know. I think it's probably just the one Kang, and I think if you're asking me to put money on it, it is He Who Remains, because we find out this is an earlier version of the TVA. Loki finds a recording of Kang talking to someone about helping them and thanking them for basically being on his side.
You made a difference in this war. Thank you for being on my team.
And it turns out that it's Judge Renslayer, so she was in on it all along, I guess. And the fact that Kang says, thanks for being on my team.
Thank you for being on my team.
Team suggests that there's more people out there, and I think, you know, it could be a few variants or dark variants of characters that we're yet to see. So back in the present, the judges are reviewing Loki's footage, trying to work out what's been going on and how to manage the new branches in time. Hunter B-15 tells them that they've been destroying timelines and countless lives, and with everything they know being called into question, they, well, start to call things into question. They decide to stop pruning timelines when Loki jumps in frantically talking about Kang and exposes the literal cover-up. General Doc sends Minutemen to the end of time to find out what happened to Sylvie. Loki tells Mobius about the end events of Season 1's finale and that he's worried about what's going on with Sylvie.
We got to the man at the end of time, and he made sense.
He questions if He Who Remains is really the bad guy or is it the other Kang variants. And yeah, I think this is a theme that we're going to explore in the season as well, as who is right and who is wrong, because the way that Loki talks about He Who Remains is he's terrified of him, but he's in awe of him. He disagrees with him, but he knows he's right. I hope they explore this more in the season. He tells Mobius that he's had his memory wiped and it looks as if it's happened several times. Hence why he doesn't remember the version of the TVA with the Kang statue. And the fact that Loki says it's obvious that it's happened to you more than once means that we're going to see other variations of the TVA as well. Mobius takes Loki to meet Ouroboros, the title of the episode, or OB. And I think this does have a much deeper meaning for the season as well, that this is all a time loop, but I'll explain that later on. But it turns out OB and Mobius are old friends, like 400 years old. And that's important. I don't think a lot of people are focusing on that, because that means that this version of the TVA, at least as Mobius remembers it, is 400 years old. And OB works right at the bottom of the TVA, and they tell the story of how they met, but they tell it or remember it differently, and I think that's going to key into a few things as well.
Yes, because then I stayed for a little bit. He took me over.
No, he left immediately.
Loki jumps in and out again, and OB doesn't think he can help as what's happening is supposed to be, well, impossible. Loki jumps to the past and meets the old OB there, actually giving him his nickname, where the same thing literally happens, and this is where this episode really takes off, and they really play with time in an interesting way, at least to the viewer. And the way it's shot is great, with OB catching up with himself at the same time at different times. And I really think that this is introducing time as a character in Loki, because time was just a sort of concept in the last show. But in this season, I think they're going to introduce the concept of time loops and paradox a little bit more and have them actually play with time rather than just use it as a device in the story. At least that's my theory. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So the same thing is happening twice at the same time in the same place but at different times. Do you get it? Past OB explains what he'd need to do to help Loki stop the time jumps, setting it up in the future, while the current OB tells Mobius he needs to go to the temporal loom or time loom, both working together at different times to get Loki back on track. But the catch is Loki has to prune himself in order for Mobius to pull him out of time. OB seems worried that the power is surging in the TVA and that all the new time branches are overloading the time loom. So what the time loom is, basically the way that OB describes it, refines raw time into the timeline, and it's not designed to handle all branches. So it's overloading, and Miss Minutes was controlling it, but obviously she's nowhere to be seen. So this is why it's getting out of hand. OB wants to prune the branches, but Hunter objects, saying that it would destroy countless lives, and instead they decide to repair it so it can process multiple branches. OB has to fix the loom while Loki needs to prune himself at the same time in order to anchor Loki. And while this is all going on, Loki jumps to the future, seeing the loom processing multiple timelines. So I guess it works. Back in the present or the past, whatever, Mobius has to go outside to fix the loom while Loki works to find the time stick in the future because he dropped it when he jumped. With time running out, which is ironic because you know time doesn't exist, OB wants to reset the loom to save the timeline and does it. He actually presses the big red button while Mobius is outside. He tells him that Loki's now lost to time and that there's nothing that they can do. But in the future, Loki's exploring the TVA and he hears a phone ringing and there's a figure behind him. Before he can answer the phone, a lift door opens and Sylvie comes through just as he jumps, or gets pruned I should say, because if you notice this and you watch it slowly, it's the person behind him that prunes him. So that's what causes Loki to be saved and fall into the arms of Mobius at the end. So it seems that the time jumps or the skips have stopped, but from the trailers and other stuff that we've seen, we know it's going to come up later on in the season. And I've got a theory video coming about that, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it. But the episode ends with the TVA seemingly going after Sylvie in full force, while Hunter B-15 watches, and that's it. Well, not really. There's a post-credit scene of Sylvie appearing through a portal in 1982 in a branch timeline. And the fact that it says branch timeline is important, because it means it's going to be different from the main MCU timeline. And she goes straight to McDonald's, which is where Loki finds her later in the season. Again, we've seen that in the trailers. She watches people just go about their lives, and she says she wants to try everything. So I guess she means time variations, because no one wants a fucking fillet of fish. And if you do, you're a psychopath. Sorry. And yeah, that was pretty much the episode. It was a solid introduction back into Loki after years away. I've got a ton of theories about this, and as I said, I'm going to be doing some theory videos on it. Like, was He Who Remains the one that was on the phone? And who was the guy that pruned Loki? We also probably didn't get to see all of Loki's time jump, so we might see that in a flashback as well. But I really enjoyed the humour this episode. As I said earlier on, Hiddleston and Wilson were great, and so was Hee Kwan when he was thrown in there as well as OB. He fitted completely right in. I really loved the flow of this episode, but I can understand why some people might be a bit frustrated with it, as it wasn't as strong as the season 1 finale. But that's where the MCU introduced the next big bad in Kang, so you can't expect that every episode in the next season of Loki, I guess. But there's going to be some huge stuff coming up in this show. As always, sure, I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. What's your theories on this episode? Who was it that pruned Loki? Is it all a big time loop or a paradox? Let me know. Or you can reach out to me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews. As I said, I'm going to be doing more videos covering this and Gen V as well, and they're going to be up at the end if you haven't watched them already. But as always, my name's Al. Thanks for watching.